Welcome to Who Wrote That Up for You, a daily podcast that shines a light on the American justice system and its role in empowering the powerful to take from you. The justice system is the only branch of your government where an individual, rather than the collective, can make the system act for you. It puts power in the individual's hands, but it's broken and being used against you at a time when you need it most.
And welcome to Who Wrote That Up for You. I am Sonia Ebron, co-founder at Courtroom 5.
And I am Deborah Sloan, the other co-founder at Courtroom 5.
Got a delightful show lined up for you today. In a few moments, we will speak with Frank Patka IV. He is the executive director at Changing Patterns. It is an education, mentoring, and resources program for people returning home from incarceration. Very, very important work going on there. So we'll be excited to speak with him. Before we get there, though, Deborah, what's on your mind today?
Well, I want to talk a little bit about I wouldn't call it a catastrophe because it's not their fault, but Southwest Airlines delays. I think um, there's a reason why they stood out more than other airlines during this season of lots of snow, of very, very cold weather. And for some reason they overbooked a bunch of flights, and then they weren't able to get those flights out. There were thousands of people who missed their flights, and there were just many people whose lives were upset over Southwest Airlines, the delays. I understand the weather and all that, but I think there are a lot of people who are seeing this as an opportunity. Because if you compare that to other airlines, it's a little bit different. And I think that people are seeing this as an opportunity to say, okay, was I how fair, how was I treated? If somebody comes out really angry, and Southwest Airlines didn't give them the respect or the tickets or overnight lodging or ground transportation that they said they would, I think there are going to be some issues, some legal issues in the court. And so I just wanted to just bring that up and just basically talk about the how something like that can disrupt people's lives and how that can end up in court.
You know, it's a really timely subject for sure. And we've had members of our team who were affected by that mess. So we've heard that luckily they, got home and were fine. But there's so many people affected by this. And I think what folks should know is that there's airline customer service, and they'll tell you what they'll do for you. And that's great. But that's not the last word. The Department of Transportation has regulations governing what they must do for people in these situations. And that's not always, on the company's website, right? And so, if you are stuck in that mess, you want to make sure that you're familiar with the Department of Transportation guidelines and requirements, right, for those airlines to treat you. Things like they've got to buy you a hotel room under certain circumstances. They've got to feed you under certain circumstances. They've got to compensate you monetarily if if you reach your destination without your bags, and it's important that you have something in that bag. If you go and buy it, they've got to compensate you for it. Those things again may not be on the company's website, and so folks need to just be aware that they do have rights that are not necessarily defined on the company's website. So yeah, I do hope everybody reaches home soon, and this disaster ends sooner rather than later. There. Well, thanks for bringing that to our attention. At Courtroom 5, we believe the courts belong to the people, in particular to the people who use them. And we, the people, are coming to claim our courts. So if you are in court without a lawyer, or you need to sue someone and can't find a lawyer to represent you, get yourself over to courtroom5.com. Try a limited version of our services for free, and we hope to provide some relief for you there. At this time, it's my pleasure to welcome Frank Patka, the fourth, at Changing Patterns. Frank, thank you for joining us on Who Wrote That Up for You.
Ladies, Deborah, Sonia, thank you for having me here. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the work you do. And so, Changing Patterns, again, provides education, mentoring, a variety of resources for people returning home from incarceration. Tell me what got you into that work.
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Sonia. So in 2015, I was released from prison after doing almost 6 years for armed robbery. And while I was in prison, I had an opportunity to have a mentor, a counselor who invested in me and really started to introduce me to ways of skills of self-analysis, honest self-analysis and self-improvement, and then how to apply these things. And so in my last second half of my prison term, I spent a lot of time participating in what we call pro-social behavior habits that benefit others in the community, and actually got to be part of some grassroots movements to encourage better communication and pro-social behavior out of not only the prisoners, but the correctional staff as well. And during that time, I made friends with other individuals who are incarcerated, and we walked together in the process of our own personal change. And then we got released and returned back to the community as citizens. However, what I found was there was a difference in what happened that moment we released from the gate between myself and some of my friends who walked that same path when we were in prison. And what happened was I ended up going through parole successfully. I got a job. I had a place to live. I had access to resources, and continued to build life. Whereas some of my friends who all had made this commitment to change when they were in prison fell short. Some wound up going back to prison, some homeless, and sadly lost a few lives as well. And so once, actually, a good friend of mine, Caleb, when he committed suicide, it really kicked off this thing that I started asking myself, what was the difference between me and them? And it's a long told tale of opportunity and who gets opportunity, right? But opportunity is also something that's earned. And I found that what I earned this opportunity with the community here. Others hadn't, and I struggled with it because I felt they had earned it too with the work they had done while in prison. But when they got out, did not have that. Whether it was they didn't have family, or the PO didn't give them a direction, or they chose not to take responsibility for it. But I wanted to make sure that more opportunity was available for people to at least say no to, rather than not have it all. And so we started Changing Patterns locally here in Central Oregon for the purpose to connect individuals exiting the correctional system to resources. So one thing is a lot of people did not know where to find the resources. Or, I mean, if you've never gone to DHS to get food stamps, or if you've never gotten a social security card, or how to find your birth certificate, these are all resources available, but can be a little difficult, especially for someone who's never walked through that path. And so what we found is there are plenty of treatment. Well, there's treatment facilities, there's transitional homes, there's employers who will hire, but what there's not is someone who's going to connect the gaps between people getting out of prison and the resources they need. And for some, for me, communication is one of my strengths. I love talking to people and meeting people. And so for others, that's not their strength. And so there's like that limit of getting to some of those resources. And so what we did is we positioned ourselves as kind of a hub spot for individuals getting out of prison and who need those resources. And so we started to, our first thing was letting the local prison know there's a prison about 45 minutes away it's a minimum that releases the majority of people in our county here. And so we built a relationship with them, let them know that there's a warm landing here called Changing Patterns. And if you get out and you are lacking some of the resources you need, come talk to us, and then we can connect you to who the right person is. And then internally, we set up a mentoring program where we found that through a lot of research, healthy, positive mentoring, one-to-one mentoring in that first 6 months to a year greatly reduces recidivism.
Got it. Got it. Frank, I'm interested in the difference between you and some of your peers who were released around the same time. What was it, if you've had a chance to think about it, that made that difference? Was it access to particular types of mentoring or resources that were available to you? Sort of, the things that you are making available through Changing Patterns, or was it something else?
I think there's a combination. The human variable has quite a plethora of options to go on. I think in the beginning, one of the things I really promote is successful reentry or successful transition from prison starts in prison. It doesn't start when you get out. And I say I'm lucky enough. I was lucky to have a counselor that was serious about investing in the people that he worked with, which is a rare thing in prison. And then also I was hungry. I just spent the summer in solitary confinement, and a summer in the bathroom is good enough to change anybody almost. So I was really ripe to take in some information. And so that timing right there was very important. And it was early enough in my sentence where I had time to prove to my family, my community, that the change was real. As we know, like time will tell the truth. And so over time, there were two things that happened. One, my family got to see the changes I made, and then also I took the investment and the mentoring that was given to me and applied it in my life. And so those two things were huge. And then, getting out, I had the opportunities. I had a place to live that was that I worked for rent for a year, so I didn't have to worry about like the payment. And then I had a job, I had transportation, I had access to healthcare, a bank account. This checklist, actually, there's a book where we just finished, and we're working on the publication of it, the Returning Citizen Survival Guide. But we have this checklist. From housing, employment, transition, or transportation, and then you have food, clothing, and hygiene, and then we have healthcare, a bank account, some sort of documentation you need, and then last but not least, support system. So those things right there, anyone getting out of prison needs to have access to these in that first year in order to set that up. And I had access to that, whereas friends did not. And don't get me wrong, some of them made decisions that they shouldn't have. Okay, we have to be responsible for ourselves, and we're not victims here. You need to be responsible for your life. But sometimes just having one or two people to lean on and to talk to as like a mentor is huge. And for there's people out there who don't have family anymore, or don't have, they burned all their bridges, but that doesn't mean they can't change, and that doesn't mean they might not want to. They might want to. And so I think for a few of them, that was a big part of it, is they burned a lot of bridges and didn't have someone to talk to, and didn't ask for help either. But that's on them. And also, but the thing is, there's this other piece that there's POs out there who aren't interested in helping, and there are amount of resources in some communities, and a lot of times people getting out of prison are not the first choice for people.
Right. Absolutely. What are some of the challenges for people who are, being released and don't have access to these sorts of resources? What is the experience generally for them?
Yeah, the big challenge is housing. Housing is the big one. when it comes to a place to live, if you got a community that is growing and there's not and you have two choices here, someone who has a criminal background and someone who doesn't, I mean, justifiably, they tend to lean that route for someone who doesn't have a criminal background. Employment has been a different issue. In the past, it has been an issue, but at least in Oregon, it's changed a bit. We've made some progressive changes as far as removing the felon box off the application. And in a time of labor shortage, we're getting a job is a pretty easy thing for people now. But a big part is housing. That's always the number one issue. And then places to go. What's the term? Hobbies, like extracurricular activities. So what do you, when you're in your downtime? For people who have been in prison, there's a dependency that's created when you've been in prison, right? You're told where to go, when to eat, when to go outside, when to go to your call outs, all this stuff in that schedule. And so it creates a routine, but it creates a bit of a dependency. Then all of a sudden you're let out and you're told, go see your PO this time, go get a job and go to these treatment places. Other than that, what do you do? And so finding maybe it's a softball club, a bowling, there's usually drinking and stuff, but like finding healthy places to hang out is a huge challenge. One, because there's not, sometimes there's limited access, because if you're not allowed to be around alcohol, you might not be able to, like I said, bowling. But then the other part is the fear of walking into a room full of strangers and going, like, be friends with you the way I
Right.
So those are two really, really big challenges. And one, the housing one is a huge thing. I mean, we've got a home issue as well that's beyond just people getting out of prison. But the community reintegrating back into community, that can be solved with a mentor. That can be solved so much with a mentor.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful. And so you mentioned that you had access to mentoring and some of these other resources before you left prison. Is Changing Patterns able to provide some of those resources to people who are currently incarcerated as well?
Currently, we are our focus now is funding, bringing funding towards getting this book and the work program into the prison. So yes, to answer your question on that, before we were trying to work on developing a mentoring inside program. That was right before COVID hit, and then COVID happened and really changed things. As we've been starting to pick back during COVID, I wrote this book, and we've been working on this program that kind of goes along with the book to prepare people for reentry. And our next idea, we're partnering with working with the government kind of employment agencies called WorkSource, and we're partnering with them to get this workbook into prisons to individuals when they're 6 months to the gate. So that's our main focus right now, is how do we get this in the hands of individuals before they get out? Because like I said before, successful reentry starts before you get out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so someone is released from prison and they are lucky enough to hear about Changing Patterns and reach out. What services, how do you help them at that point?
Right. Currently, right now, I'm gonna connect them to the resources that are available. As a resource, as a company ourselves, we're not providing any specific resource. Although that reminds me, I'm gonna have to talk to someone pretty quick. We used to have this thing called the Moving Forward group, and it would be a welcome home. Basically, we're offering anybody who got out of prison, we're gonna buy you breakfast, come to our local restaurant here called Jake Steiner, and we're gonna buy you breakfast, meet with you, talk to you, see how you're doing, welcome you home, kind of get a feel for where you're at, offer basically an eval, an assessment, however you want to call it, that you can fill out. And if you want, come back next week. So that would be on a Saturday. Come back next week with that filled out, And if you're interested to participate, then we're going to connect you with a mentor. And then based on the checklist items that you're in need for, we're going to connect you to our partner organizations. And so I'm glad, because it seems to be about time we kick back up again.
That's great. I absolutely hope you do. You know, I've heard you say that succeeding as a returning citizen really requires a personal commitment. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, thank you. That's our bread and butter right there. So the workbook we're putting together really takes this analogy of your mind as a garden. The book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill was a huge influence in me, in my life. And he talks about your mind as a garden. And so I've taken that and really expanded upon it to these three parts. And the first is seeds of your garden. The seeds you plant is your personal commitment. And your personal commitment is the direction you want to go in your life. So right now, my personal commitment in life is to put prisons out of business one book at a time. Our personal commitments, though, for some might be a big, giant goal, 10-year plan. For others, it might be just successfully getting off parole. So we take that, and that's your seed. Those are your seeds. And the personal commitment, it has to be yourself. It has to be yourself. Someone else can't make this, because when times get tough, there's going to be you're going to be tested. And that's what I found is when I haven't made that commitment to myself, then I'll waver. But if I have that commitment, that becomes a filter. Does this help or hurt me in my fulfilling my personal commitment? And so it starts with that. So that's the seeds of the garden. And then you can't plant seeds in a garden in soil that's hard or clay or full of weeds. And so we got to cultivate our garden. And the soil makes up our habits. And our habits are what our seeds grow from. And we have this concept called habit trend. What trend is your habits taking you in life? Is it taking you up? Is it taking you down? And so as you go through this process, you've got this commitment that you're going to make. Now you've got the soil of habits that we need to replace these habits that are trending down with habits that are going to help us trend up. And then we follow with part 3, which is the routine life. And that's the irrigation. That's what we feed our garden with. And what I've come to find out, and it's been proven time and time again, people with a routine of positive, healthy habits are successful in what they're in their direction. And so that's our kind of our foundation that we're building on the internal side. And then checklist is the external. We want them to take this personal commitment and this garden that they've cultivated internally and help them successfully achieve this checklist, so then they can step forward and move on from this life of parole and be a returned citizen.
Exactly. You know, Frank, I think the work you're doing is so very important. I wish you continued success with it and growth. I'd love to see your book in every prison until it shuts them all down. Absolutely. I'm going to share your website on the screen for our viewers. That's changingpatternsinc.org. Where can people help your organization grow, or do you take donations, or how are you funded?
Yeah, so right now we are funded by locals who are really believing this cause. We're working on partnering with the local government here to access some grants for funding. But yeah, if you go to the website, you can connect with us. Sign or email, contact me there. Or if you want to contact me directly, it's Frank, Frank, at changingpatternsinc.org, just like the website. And we can connect you to the right places.
Excellent. And where else can people find you online?
Yeah, so we have a Returning Citizens Survival Guide Facebook page that we're getting kicked up. And then also, I believe, on Instagram as well. And then I have Changing Patterns as a Facebook page as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Frank, thank you so much for the work you do. Again, wish you continued success, and we will track your progress and have you on again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Deborah, for the time.
Thank you, Frank. All right.
Fantastic.
Wonderful.
That is extraordinary. So, Deborah, what's the winner of yesterday's quiz or the last quiz, and what do you
What?
have teed up for us again?
Well, it was easy. It was a true or false. True or false. You always have a right to appeal an adverse ruling in your case. That is false. Uh, what most people probably think that they have a right to an appeal, but you don't. You have a right, typically have right to a direct appeal at the end of a case, and there's a judgment at the end, and it's a final, and you have a right to that, typically in the middle of a case, if a judge makes a ruling that you're not happy with, you don't have a right to an appeal, but you can try to, especially if it's something egregious, you can do something called an interlocutory appeal, where you're appealing, where you're writing rather than a notice of appeal, a writ of certiorari. So there is a way that you can appeal, but you don't have a right to one. All right. Next question. Today's question. A successful blank can end your case on its merit when no genuine issue of material fact exists. Is it a motion to vacate, a notice of appeal, a motion for summary judgment, or a motion to dismiss with prejudice? Which one of these fill in the blank? All right, until next time.
I love those questions. I'm looking forward to seeing the answer to that. That is fantastic. I just thinking about Frank's work, and others in that space. There's nothing really more important than lived experience.
Right.
He took a very difficult circumstance and
Hmm.
recognized his advantages and the success that he was having, and wanted to help other people enjoy the same success. I mean, I think that is so important and valuable. And what's interesting to me is that um, that kind of work. There's so many experiences that are difficult that can be turned into the sort of valuable work that he is doing. And I often just want to encourage people to think about what they have in their experience that
Hmm.
can be shared with others to make other people experiencing the same thing have an easier time of it. So just really, I'm grateful for Frank and the work he's doing there.
Exactly. People with passion for what they're doing and they're helping people like that. I just love it. I just
Yeah,
love
yeah, exactly. It's good. It's good for the heart. That's fantastic.
it.
That's all we
All
have
right.
for you today. We will, as always, thank you for joining us, and we will see you again next time.
Are you feeling beleaguered, angry, or afraid, as if things are spinning out of control and you're powerless to stop them? It's easy to just let things slide and hope they don't get worse. But they often do get worse. The thing is, you're not powerless. Our courts belong to us, and their purpose is to give power to the powerless. Don't let your grievances pile up without redressing them. You can handle this in court. Or, if someone takes you to court, you can take them to school.